Good afternoon. I'm Yomika Bennett, Executive Director of the New York Charter Schools Association. Welcome to our Tuesday weekly webinar. Many of you have finished the school year or will be soon. I've been invited to many great virtual graduations. Thank you. The students have shined in their graduation videos. I love them. They're a lot of fun to watch. It was nice to see scholars celebrate their hard work, especially with the crises they're living through right now. We've arranged here at the association to have graduation videos for schools from elected officials. If you need help getting well wishes for your students from elected officials, please reach out to us. And we love those graduation invitations, so keep them coming. Speaking of elected officials, today is primary day. There are candidates running on platforms to stop and stifle charter schools, others support charters. All candidates should see your graduation videos if you have them. Please share the link to your online graduation with elected officials and the media with the note, this is our work, and maybe even with a hashtag, invest in the future. Of course, today, go out and vote if you haven't already, and fill out your census. We're always trying to remind folks of that here. We want to get those census dollars in, and we want to make the votes count. And spread the word to at least 3 other people in your school community. The end of the year means it's time, too, for a break to refresh and turn our attention to summer. I've gotten a lot of out of office messages already from people taking a well-deserved vacation. We will be adjusting our webinar schedule for the summer. So on Thursday this week at 4 p.m., we will have our regular Thursday deep dive webinar. It will be on District Charter Collaborative. Next Tuesday, June 30th, we will have our weekly webinar, and then we will take a break until Tuesday, July 14th. And then on the Thursday the 16th, the Race, Justice, Equity series will return and will feature educators of color. Don't miss that conversation. I want to give a quick shout out to Evergreen Charter School for their Race and Reform webinar last night. Senator Kevin Thomas and Assemblymember Taylor Darling were part of an engaging discussion on race. On August 14th, we will return to our regular schedule again with an eye toward reopening. So we'll have all that posted on our website. You'll see the schedule out there. Stay with us, and then let's enjoy a nice break. Speaking of break, let's go to Congress. Congress has not yet approved a federal aid bill for the states. We are seeking in New York, of course, aid to avoid school funding cuts. The Division of the Budget was due to release its plan for the budget cuts, was due to release their plan. We expected it earlier, then it was postponed, delayed to the end of this month. It has not been released yet, and there's no confirmation at this point as to when that will happen. The cynic in me predicts that the plan will be released after today's primary, but that's just me. Thank you to everyone who pushed out the call for federal aid through our Action Center. Keep it up. We still need the money. And there are other bills in Congress I want to bring your attention to. The first is the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act to reform policing and curb racial injustice, which, among other things, would make lynching a federal crime. And you can find out more about that bill, and we'll put the link in the chat. Thank you to the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools for highlighting that bill. The next bill, the House of Representatives plans to vote, has a bill, and they plan to vote on a $1.5 trillion Moving America Forward infrastructure package. That package will include funding for transportation, housing, broadband, clean energy, and $100 billion for schools. The House plans to vote on the package before the July 4th break, so I wanted to bring those 2 bills to your attention. Another update we have is yesterday the governor's office released guidelines for higher education reopening. If you haven't seen it, please check those out. The guidelines in the checklist, they cover distancing, PPE, cleaning, and screening requirements. As I read through the guidelines, it struck me that they could apply to K-12 as well, so I recommend reading the guidelines to at least get a glimpse into the kinds of things the state is focused on in developing guidelines. Charters are well represented on the New York State SED task force, and we have a line of communication in with the state. We will keep you posted on what we hear about K-12. The link to the guidelines is in the chat. That's the guidelines as well as the checklist. Well, I'm joined today by Susie Corrello, Executive Director of the SUNY Charter Schools Institute, David Frank, Executive Director of the Charter Schools Office at NYSED, as well as Anjali Matos, Executive Director, Policy and Operations at New York City Department of Education, and Erin Cochran, Managing Director in the same office, as well as Corey Callahan from the New York City Charter Center. Welcome, everyone. First, we'll check in with any updates from the authorizers, and if you have questions for our panelists, please put it in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. Susie, Erin, David, welcome. We'll start with you, Susie. Do you have any updates you want to share?
Thanks, Yomika. Hi, everyone. Great to see you, or not see you, but I look at your name. So I love, I was telling someone how much I missed the early days of these webinars before Zoom and everyone got wise about all of the nefarious things that could happen, because I loved seeing your faces. So now I substitute. So when you see my hand going up, I'm scrolling through to see your names. I just want to echo Yomika's shout out to all of the graduates and all of the schools that are doing superhuman things for their graduates with regard to graduation this year. It seems like you do that every year, and that this year there's just an extra layer on that. We had 2,500, over actually 2,500 seniors graduate from SUNY authorized charter schools this year. So I don't know sector-wide just how many there are, but that's a huge impact. And I am continuously honored for all of you that actually make that happen for kids. It is amazing. Those graduations are amazing. Please keep sending them to us at the Institute. I've had the great good fortune to record a couple of video graduation things, and there is no explaining to you how the former school teacher feels when I get to talk to your kids. Even if it's over video. I also wanted to underscore, do take a look at those higher education guidelines that came out. They are largely about the operations and DOH pieces, and I think that's a really important set of knowledge to have. Of course, there will be those guidelines for K to 12, but we also anticipate, and as I have said before, we're asking for, some ability to make determinations that will sustain for the entire 2020-2021 school year, under a similar plan where, just like you gave us continuity of education plans, that you can give us that plan for the 2020-2021 school year, and we can all move forward with a little bit of certainty. I am not in my normal place, or I would try to show you my vote sticker. So I'm going to underscore the vote. If you haven't voted, hang up from the webinar now. Sorry, Yomika. Hang up from the webinar now. Go vote. We did it remotely. And then I think there's two other things. One is thank you to the schools that are getting ready to open this fall. And for the rest of you, as much of a challenge as you have this year, imagine that you got a charter approved and a space approved and hired a staff and are enrolling students that you thought was going to be bricks and mortar, and now there's going to be some wrinkle in that, we're pretty sure, right? And so to each one of the SUNY authorized schools, but to every about to open charter in the state, if you need support, I know you're authorizers, and we stand at the ready to support you for that, because I think you are so far venturing into the unknown because you are so committed to the kids of New York that need you the most. We stand ready to support you. And I think my last update is that we've given some information to our renewal schools and the Superfine SUNY team, many of whom I know are also on here today. The Superfine SUNY team is planning and being very thoughtful and strategic about how we're going to accomplish the renewal visits that we have to do in the fall. And so by the time I come back to these webinars, because I'm going to be out next week, so we're going to have special guest stars in my place. But by the time we see each other again, we will have some additional very specific information for you, and we're targeting the end of July for that. So look for that reach out. But we are very excited. We have a huge sense of possibility about all the good you can continue to do over the summer and in the fall. And as I always say, please reach out to me if I can be of any support or assistance. That's my update, Yomika.
All right, thank you. Hi, Erin. Do you have an update?
Hello. No major updates. As we shared last week, Lori Hazley is back, and we are so excited to welcome her back. So very likely in the next couple weeks, she will be taking over from me during this spot. And you will begin to see her on emails, and of course, feel free to reach out to her directly with any questions. But that is it. Yeah.
All right, great. Thanks. I'll just note that there's room in the screen for both of you.
Good point. We were going to work on like a skit where we're passing hats. David had a brilliant idea. So, you know, I don't know. We might get creative here.
I'm here for it. Let's do it, right? Good. All right, David, do you have an update for us?
Sure. We're really trying to up our authorizer comedy game for the summer to keep people engaged. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. Yeah, you never know what. But to echo what Susie said, we just want to congratulate each and every one of your graduates and students who matriculated or are going to be doing so in the coming days. It's just heartening to see that in so many cities and zip codes across the state where we really need high quality educational opportunities, that our schools are providing them. I actually was talking to the Rochester Academy Charter School today. They sent me some data about their graduation rate, and 94% in a city where only 1 out of every 2 students graduates, and almost all of their graduates are economically disadvantaged students, and that's why we do this work. So thank you to each and every one of you. I sent out some graduation remarks in our monthly newsletter, and I know only Board of Regents authorized charter schools get it, but I shared a link to our archives if anyone wants to read the comments and our well wishes to the class of 2020. I would say the bottom line is we need strong leaders and global citizens now more than ever. So they're well prepared in your schools for doing that. We're working hard here at the State Ed Department to get out guidance on special education. Last week we sent out some information to answer some questions about supports for students with disabilities for next year. We're also working on the reopening task force that is closing up this week. So thank you to all the school leaders who were able to serve on that. We're now awaiting guidance from the governor, and again, to echo what both Yomika and Susie said, the guidance that was released for higher education is definitely a must read, although some of the guidance might change for K through 12 institutions. It's a great starting point to answer some of your questions that we've been getting about how do you prepare for the unknown. But I think ultimately, although it's not great to hear, I think to some extent we're not going to know what lies ahead in the fall, what lies in store for us. I just saw today that New York is only one of three states across the country that's able to effectively contain coronavirus, and we certainly the other 2 states are New Jersey and Massachusetts, but we certainly don't want to lose momentum that we've had. And then lastly, as we look towards the summer, today the State Ed Department released some guidance on summer schools. So if you didn't get that guidance, you could let me know. It was sent out to the charter school listserv. It's our annual manual that we send out, but there are a lot of flexibilities in there for providing summer school in a remote environment. And so if you are providing summer school, or even if you're partnering with your district to provide summer school, we hope that you will that you'll take a look. I'll dig up a link and I'll put it in the chat right after this. So that being said, Yomika, turning it back over to you.
All right, great. Thanks, David. Susie, we're going to start with you for the question. In a typical year, there would be 2 rounds of RFPs for the Institute. Nothing about 2020 is typical, I understand that. But will there be a round 2 for RFPs this year?
well, there's one RFP, right? And we always put in the dates for the first round, and then depending on a lot of factors, kind of make a determination about a second round. And so we have not finalized that determination yet. I will say that this has been a really interesting year. Again, a big shout out to our pre-opening schools who had an instructional design in a way that they were going to set up their culture. And now we're kind of shifting to, as with everyone, figure out how they're going to do that remotely. And for those of those applicants that are moving forward from the first round to the kind of interview stage, we're still trying to navigate what the logistics of that are, including things like actually being able to establish a room and determine whether or not we can meet people live and in person, or whether we need to do it via Zoom. And so at the same time we're doing that, we're trying to figure out the logistics and the time frame for a second round. And I promise you, we will get it out there as soon as we possibly can. This is just another, as Yomika said, this is another year where things do not run on the time frame and as smoothly as we would have hoped.
That's right. All right, thank you. Erin, next question is for you. Schools are anxious about reopening, building access, and improvement projects. What would you say is a constructive way for schools to get through this time while they wait for guidance?
Fabulous question. And I don't think we have too much more to share beyond that, which we've already talked about. And I think Anjali may be touching a little bit on this too in the New York City portion. So I just want to take a second to reiterate what we've kind of been talking about a lot, which is the need to have flexibility in your planning. But just wanting to mention, as we're heading into the summer and folks are taking really well-earned vacations, Yomika, you mentioned you're seeing a lot of out of offices. I'm seeing a lot of out of offices. And just knowing that in summers past, it has been hard to reach schools or to get information from schools. So it, just as much as possible, as folks are taking vacation, ensuring that you're still able to be flexible and to move on information as it becomes available and to take opportunities as they become available to provide information as it's needed, I think it's going to be really, really important.
All right, great. What's the saying? If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So you're telling everybody to stay ready. All right. David, next question is for you. Over the weekend, supplemental information came out on special education. Are there a few specific items or documents that schools should be aware of that you would say?
Yeah, so as you said, we released some special ed information. I have it on very good authority from the National Center for Special Ed and Charter Schools that New York is doing far more than other states in terms of guidance. So it's always good to see that. And the venerable Paul O'Neill does not tell a lie. So it was good to hear that feedback. But I would say what it boils down to is that schools should work very closely with their committees on special education to both identify and assess the learning interruptions that students with disabilities have had over the past 3 months, that amending the IEP, if appropriate, should be considered. And there's a number of factors that we ask the CSE, which of course, as always, the charter school as well as the parent should be part of, but some factors that should be asked, such as what types of alternative methods of instruction were provided, have there been changes in the student's educational progress, is there a possibility that the student will require different services. A lot of the CSEs don't know, and districts don't know the extensive continuity of learning plans that you've implemented. So it's going to be on you as charter schools to help inform them of that and let them know what services students were receiving. There's a lot of information on extended school year, and certainly that could be considered for students with IEPs, although it's not automatically a given. Again, an assessment needs to take place. And then there's a lot of information on compensatory services. So those are services that are provided to the student because they are not able to be provided with services to achieve FAPE in a normal setting, and and there's a lot of information on parent voice. And so I think it behooves charter schools to ensure that parents do have a voice on the CSE. We don't want to see a situation where you're meeting as a CSE either in person or remotely, and everyone has a folder with the child's information except the parent, and everyone's speaking at the CSE except the parent. So that's something that's important for schools to pay attention to, and it's peppered throughout the guidance. And then there's information on timelines for initial and re-evaluations, particularly as many of your schools are admitting new students, maybe kindergarten students who've never been evaluated before. That SED does interpret the executive orders. It's actually Executive Order 202.37 authorizes in-person initial evaluations and re-evaluations. So those certainly can happen in person, and you can work with your districts and CSEs on that. It's a wealth of information. I would highly recommend that people read through it, even if you're the school leader and not the special ed lead. It's two documents. It's a quick read. Take a look.
Okay, great, thank you. The next question I have is, as schools are closing out or have ended the school year, do you have any advice or updates on what to focus on or prepare for either for the summer or as schools are thinking about reopening? That's a question for everyone. We'll start with Erin.
The only thing that we were thinking about, let me reframe. So there are a lot of things that we are still definitely looking for guidance for, guidance is in the works for, but I think some things are becoming a little bit more clear as things that will be needed. So as we're thinking about buildings being at most 50% capacity, it's a very good likelihood that you will want as part of your plan that every student has a device. And I know a lot of schools were able to provide devices to students last year, but we're also hearing that some students still don't have devices. So as your authorizer, we are definitely wanting schools to be reaching out for those things that seem to be pretty well known at this point, even if the exact universe that we'll be existing in is not clear. So as you're thinking about devices, what does that look like? What does your supply chain look like? Do you have budget concerns? And we would much rather be discussing that now at this point, ahead of fall, as opposed to in October as you're struggling to implement your amazing academic programs. So we're happy to talk through those things as they come up, but definitely please reach out.
Okay, great, thank you. David, you want to answer next?
Yep. I would echo what Erin said, and I would also add, how do you ensure equity of access to all of your students? But I would support Erin's comments.
Okay, great. And Susie, do you have an update, your answer for that?
I would echo some comments that we've been making for at least the last month, which is make sure you have confidence in the data you're getting from your parents and staff, both in terms of how parents are feeling. I know a number of the leaders that I am speaking to have smartly multiple scenario planned, and which pieces of that planning excuse me, are working for the members of your school community, and how is that changing? Because I think it will change, you know, as the summer evolves and as we understand more about testing rate, infections, people going back to work. You know, an answer 3 weeks ago from a parent who didn't know when they were going back to work, given a month from now when they might have some indication about when they might need to go back to work, is the classic shifting sands we've all been maneuvering on during this time. So I would say pay attention, excuse me, to what your parents are telling you, and plan accordingly. And if anything, especially because we're going to be taking a few weeks off, if anything is interesting or curious, please pick up the phone and call us, send us an email, send me a text. And we'll navigate each individual piece as we're going forward. I think, you know, Yomika framed it really well at the beginning of this webinar. A lot may happen between now and next week. And then we'll have the 4th of July, and then we'll be kind of grappling with how we take the plans that you guys, the multiple scenarios you're already planning, and actually organize them within what the ultimate parameters end up to be and what we can best do for our kids. So my summer of uncertainty advice is I'm happy to talk anytime. The entire Institute team is, and I'm sure that all the authorizers and teams on this call feel the same way, and we'll navigate this together. You have been insanely great. There is no comparable data. I know I said this last week, but if you go back and look at just the average data from the limited sample of SUNY's charters, there is no comparative data to what you've been able to accomplish. And B, when we talk to people nationally, I've been on 3 national Zoom meetings, kind of sharing out what you've been able to do. And people are amazed that, again, most of our kids are, you know, by years of categorical kind of definition, our most vulnerable kids. Have gotten so much more this spring. So continue to think about that and what we're going to do in the fall, and call us if you've got questions.
All right, great, thank you. All right, now we will turn it over to John Thatcher, who will take the questions for Q&A. Hi,
Great.
John.
Hey, Yomika, thank you. There's just a couple questions in the Q&A. First one is a technical question. So for fiscal year 21 school budgets, can authorizers confirm the deadlines to submit?
Yeah, so there might be authorizer specific deadlines, but right now we're planning to collect budgets by November 1st. Normally we would collect it on August 1st, but we're moving, for Board of Regents authorized charter schools, we're moving our budget collection to be in line with the general fiscal collection that we do as part of the ESSA fiscal transparency shift in November. But then again, that only applies to Board of Regents authorized charter schools.
Great. Susie or Erin?
So ours are end of June, beginning of July. If I know that Barb Ackenauer, I mean this in the best way, but she is the nation's authorizing director of finance and managing director of finance and operations, has had reach outs from individual schools or networks that have said this isn't going to work with our schedule and what we know. And so we're happy to provide some flexibility associated with that. And as well as, you know, our schools have the opportunity to adjust their budgets every quarter. So that as the fiscal year progresses and we understand more about the financial impact of the COVID-19 New York on pause, schools will be able to react to that and just give us the budgets they would have designed anyway.
Great. Erin,
Oh yeah, sorry. I was doing some research. So typically for DOE authorized schools, we collect budgets on October 1st. We have not confirmed if that timeline will shift, but that is usually when we are collecting them.
Great, thanks.
I would just add, John, it's not like we don't collect schools' budgets. Whenever schools make a change, they're submitting an updated budget to us. So that's still part of our revision guidance, and we'll continue to do it, but a larger collection in November.
Great, thank you. Second question is, and David, this one might be for you. And you might have answered it already with the reference to the special education guidance that SED is putting together. but it's a question specific to like batching students and how to sort of reconcile that guidance with like best practices and guidance around SPED guidelines. I guess the direct question there is, will the SED guidance address that specifically?
Yeah, I don't think the SED, I'm 100% certain the SED guidance does not say batch students together or corral students together. Students with disabilities should continue to participate fully as to the best of the school's ability in the general education program, also known as the least restrictive environment, and schools and CSEs will continue to work towards providing students with FAPE, but students with disabilities may, for example, if you have a student that needs a evaluation, that evaluation might take place in person. That's not going to be grouping or batching of students. Rather, it'll be one evaluation generally with a health service provider or a practitioner of some sort. But if the general education program will be remote, then our students with disabilities will receive their general education instruction remotely. It is possible, particularly given the guidance we received from the governor, that in the fall, some related service providers may provide those related services in person. That's a possibility. That's not something that's been determined yet, but under no circumstances have I read that students will be batched or any other term for that together.
Got it. Thank you. Great. And then the last question I think here is, and David, again, apologies, I think this one might also be.
That's okay.
The 45-hour requirement for Regents credit courses for summer school, does that include synchronous and asynchronous instruction?
It does. So it's the SED very deliberate in writing the regulation as the equivalent of 45 minutes of instruction. So that might be synchronous or asynchronous. Your teacher might plan for 45 minutes of hours rather, I'm sorry, hours, not minutes, 45 hours of instruction. And maybe the teacher is able to deliver that in 30 minutes. Well, to me, that would be the equivalent of 45 hours of instruction. I keep saying minutes, but I mean hours. So sorry. If you can do it in 30 minutes, more power to you. But yes, it does include synchronous and asynchronous.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I think the other questions that are remaining here are specific to DOE in New York City, and so I will turn it over to Corey and Anjali.
I would just say, John, you did a fantastic job standing in for Anna. And
big shoes to fill.
Big shoes.
Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, John. Good afternoon, everyone. As I think a lot of us know, a lot of people are out. I think that we have not much for updates this week, though, as everyone is saying, there's a lot to come. I think everyone is anticipating the K-12 guidance, as Yomika mentioned. I will say that for charter schools in co-located space, tomorrow we are holding a session with the New York City DOE, specifically folks from the space planning part of the team, along with the charter school office folks, to make sure that folks have a chance to ask questions about all their space utilization preliminary capacity documents. I would add that, any charter, New York City is welcome to register to join, but obviously this is definitely very important conversation that I would encourage any co-located charter to be there, but other charters may also want to be there too. I put in the chat box the Zoom if you haven't registered yet. The registration is through DOE. So I haven't actually surprisingly seen any questions in the chat about that. But if you have questions, make sure you come tomorrow. The other thing that I wanted to get to before I go to the chat questions is Anjali, if you could speak a little bit about, I know there was a training announced that we've spoken about several times, but just really wanted to make sure that schools understood the training for reconciliation on June 25th and what that's going to cover, and why charters should register, as well as, because I know you appreciate that a lot of schools are potentially off this week, what will be the resources and support that DOE will have available to help support schools while we do the reconciliation in July.
Yeah. Hi, Corey, and hi, everyone. Good afternoon. All right, so yeah, we can start there, Corey. So we have, as you all have seen in the C Weekly, we have this training, reconciliation training on the 25th. It's happening from 9 to 11, and I'm gonna dig up, actually, Erin, if you can help me dig up the sign up and just put it in the chat, that'd be great. Essentially, in this training, we're gonna be covering step-by-step things that schools need to know in order to successfully create that invoice. That includes the first part of the year when we were, doing in-person instruction, including the last 3 months of the year when we were, remote. We do have, this is my plug for my friend David. We do have some conversations happening with with the finance department at SED regarding some questions that have surfaced. We are working very closely with David to figure those questions out. So we don't have all the answers yet. However, we do have some logistics to go through and how you're going to complete the invoice. We do have some new steps this year that schools will have to put in place for remote learning. So we will be covering all of those steps, Corey.
Great. And then just in case schools are not able to join on June 25th, how can they get support in July?
Yeah, so good one. So we have, we know that a lot of schools are going to be off. So we've heard from you, and because of that, we're going to be adding an additional office hours for finance. So we'll host 2 office hours the following week. And we'll try to do it like in the beginning of the week and the end of the week, even after the portal opens on the 6th, in case folks aren't around. And outside of that, Corey, of course, as always, if you have any questions and you can't make our office hours or our training, please reach out to your point person and on my team, and we're happy to set up a call or whatever is needed.
Great. So I'll go now. We always get this question, but do we have any idea of when the NYC DOE calendar will come out? And I think specifically schools are interested in, is it not going to be the first Thursday after Labor Day, which is, generally what it has been?
Mm-hmm. So I don't know when the calendar is going to be issued. We've been bugging folks internally. I think that there are a lot of questions to figure out before the calendar is issued. I do think, Corey, that is likely going to be the second Thursday, but I am not sure. I don't know for sure. So I can say that, as a prelim, if you want to hold it the 10th of September, you can. We'll follow up when the calendar is final.
And just so everyone knows, the 10th of September is actually that Thursday right after Labor Day. It happens to be that September is very late this year. So Anjali is essentially saying, from what she knows, it is still the same, but of course we're waiting for confirmation. Another question is about the summer. I think, as everyone knows, in New York City co-located schools, the access to schools is going to change after June 26th, as per some of the guidance that we've seen. So I guess the first question is when are we getting that new guidance? And I'll push out, what if people need to get into schools next week? Is that guidance going to be, how would schools get in next week if guidance is not out by, say, this Friday?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question, Corey. We don't, I know we're working on the summer access guidance. I don't know when I will be ready. I think right now you should plan, if you know, if you're anticipating the need to be in your buildings next week, I think that you should maybe think about having access this week or perhaps the following week. I know that a lot of folks are going to be out the week of June 29th. So I think it's a smart idea to have a plan B for that week.
Next question, for schools that are in co-located space that have constructions of projects approved, including the facilities matching fund, when can they expect to commence construction?
And this is independent projects, Corey?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
So,
assuming, I guess I'm saying that very confidently. I did not write the question. I am assuming that, yes. If Steve wants to update and say that I'm misspeaking, he should write in.
all right, so here's what I'll say, Corey. If you are in a DOE space and you have an approved third-party portal letter, meaning the team has gone through the process and given you a letter of approval, you should have, you should be in touch with that team, right? So you're likely working with Jonathan Trejo or someone from Tom's Taraco's team. You should just confirm with them when you have access to the building to do that work.
Got it.
I think right now, Corey, one thing I'll add just for context here, that's good to know, there are a lot of things happening in our building this summer, right? So we have the food hubs, which will continue to reopen. That's an announcement. We have the rec centers, the enrichment or regional centers. We also have lead testing that's going to happen across the city, and you'll get more information from us on that. In addition, we have cooling centers and testing centers. So all of that to say, there are a lot of moving pieces, and we want to make sure that you're all set with what you need. Corey, and I see that Steve is saying yes, that you were correct in your clarification. So I would say, Steve, if you reach out to the space planning folks just to get that confirmation on when you can start your work. And of course, if you need help, you're always happy to reach out to us. We're happy to support.
Great. And then there are a couple of questions at the end that I'll put together, which is DOE going to be providing PPE? And I guess I'll take it, I'll break it into two parts for all charters in New York City, and then I'll subcategorize it, or for just charters in co-located space, if you know the answer.
Yeah, I do not know the answer to that. But as things develop, I'm happy to update this group, and we'll of course include it in the C Weekly.
And I also know a few schools, even schools that are in co-located space, that are saying, we want the certainty of buying PPE for our, no matter what will come. And they've been doing that. But I also think this is an opportunity for schools to partner together or with the advocacy organizations to say, we want to invest in this so that we have some certainty for the fall. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a great opportunity. Worst comes to worst, you donate it to a hospital or back to the DOE. But I think it's a great opportunity to come together as a sector, and I hope that people will take up that mantle and be leaders in this field.
Mm-hmm. Yomika, I just want to add too that we are available and will help schools if they want to try to put something like that together. Thank you.
Great.
I don't have anything else, and we're done with the chat box, Anjali, unless you have anything else to add. I'll turn it back to Yomika.
Nothing else to add. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. So we have one more weekly Tuesday webinar, which will be on the 30th. And don't forget as well, on this Thursday, the deep dive webinar with the Charter District Collaborative. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Enjoy the day. We'll see you Thursday. Thank you.
Be well.
Be well.
Bye.